I feel like large parts of the world, including the US, is now saying, look, it's like COVID never existed. Are we too complacent?
I think in many parts of the world we are too complacent. Still people are getting their boosters. I think there's a lot of fatigue, as you know. I really hope that as we go into the fall, people get their second generation booster, the one we're developing now, that we should be able to launch late summer. That will be adapted to Omicron and have also two mRNA, the old virus in it as well, the vaccine. I think that's really important. What I worry about is especially people at high risk, 50 plus, immunocompromised, people with comorbidity, not getting their booster in the fall, and then in the fall or winter getting COVID, but having very low or no antibodies left, and then being severely sick.
So what's your biggest concern? I mean, there's a development of the vaccine. I guess, the gold standard would be to stop the transmission. So it's not that I don't get as sick, is that it completely stops it, or is it convincing people still that your vaccines are safe?
It really depends on the groups. That's why I think it's tough to have one rule. You still have a lot of people that have not been vaccinated with any vaccine. And then you have people who thought that vaccine will protect you against everything, transmission and disease forever. And given the virus is evolving so fast, I think this was not an hypothesis that was correct from a scientific standpoint. I think with time, as the virus slows down its mutation, because it's not going to evolve in an infinite way, it just cannot because of the size of a spike protein. I think we're going to see longer and longer protection. If you remember, the current vaccine against Alpha and Delta held very well. It's Omicron, because the genetic drift was so big that it didn't help as well for infection, but it helped for hospitalization.
But is this going to be a yearly jab, and can you combine it with flu?
Yes and yes. So we believe for people at high risk, again 50 plus and so on, we, in the category, we're going to need an annual booster, but it's going to be in a quick injection, and it's going to be having a nice winter. And what we're doing is indeed combining all the respiratory vaccine into one, so flu and COVID, and RSV and others that people don't even know of, but they get sick with, so that you get one shot early in the fall and you have a nice winter.
But this is for, I imagine, Western countries, right? There are large parts of the rest of the world, China, with still that zero COVID policy. How will that evolve? Are we going to 2-3 speed? And how difficult is it to also convince emerging market countries that a vaccine is safe and that they should take?
Yeah, so I think the emerging countries have done a great job understanding the technology. They have great scientists and doctors and vaccinating their people. Of course, it depends on some countries. Some are not as well vaccinated. I'm worried about China and the current policy. I think it's unsustainable. Because the virus only becomes more infectious. So I think what was amazing management of a virus in 2020 is turning a liability now, and the only way out is having high efficacy vaccines.
Yeah, but is it because the vaccines are not as efficient, or because people don't want to take the vaccine in China?
I think it's both. I think you have a lot of older people that have not taken any vaccine, and then the vaccine efficacy was not great with the initial strain. So think about what it looks like with Omicron now.
Stephane, the share price of Moderna has been under pressure. Why? I mean,
one of the things I don't control is the stock price. I think people don't see the power of a platform. Unlike traditional biotech companies that are analog companies, onesies and twosies of drugs that have no correlation. All of our 30 plus vaccine in development, 30 plus vaccines, are all using exactly the same chemical matters as the COVID vaccine, which has been approved by the authorities. And so if you look at it now, we have 4 vaccines in phase 3. And we're preparing those 4 launches. What I'm very excited about this year is we're going to get data in liver rare disease, in cancer, later this year. We just announced that with Vertex, we have found a way to get mRNA inhaled into the lungs. We're going to start with cystic fibrosis. That will be in the clinic this year and straight into patients. So with $20 billion of cash on the balance sheet, so it's around a little bit less than half our market cap in cash, and this platform for which we're investing behind, and we're buying back shares. I think people that are buying now are going to be really happy down the road.
But is this a regulation, timeline concern? So do you believe that because of COVID and the vaccines were approved so quickly, that this kind of speed can be used for other vaccines, or will it slow down again?
So it will slow down a little bit, but where the mRNA platform is quite magic is if you look at our flu and our RSV, we're able to go from starting a phase 1 to starting a phase 3 in around 12 months. It takes usually 4 years with traditional medicines, with the same regulators. So I think the platform in its speed is going to still deliver a lot of value for patients and investors.
Stephane, we saw Pfizer sell certain drugs actually at cost in certain countries that need that the most. You're selling, I believe, stock options or shares for non-profits. Is our relationship, or is the healthcare relationship with charity and doing good for the world changing?
So I cannot comment about Pfizer, but I can, of course, applaud what Pfizer is doing for low-income countries. I wish we had done it earlier, because those countries have been suffering for lack of product. As you know, we are selling our vaccine at cost in low-income countries, like Pfizer is doing for the vaccine. And we're going to have a very progressive strategy for low-income countries as we launch more products. So my stock option is something quite different. It's just that my first grant as CEO of Moderna is going to expire next year. Yeah. It's a pretty big grant, because the company at the time, was pretty tiny. The strike price is 99 cents. And so my wife and I decided to give all the proceeds to charity after tax. It's just that what we want to do is that we don't need all that money, and we want to use the money to help suffering in the world. There's so much suffering in the world that we want to use that capital to help foundations.
And maybe it could inspire others. So if you're watching, think about this as well. Stephane, what should I do about monkeypox? Should we really worry? Is it like just a case of concern?
So we're monitoring closely. We're also working in the labs on vaccine candidates, just in case. But we believe, because the way the virus transmits from one human to a human, which is very different from flu or from COVID, it's not airborne, it's from body fluids. So I think it's mostly, intimacy, where you can contact the virus. So we think this outbreak can be contained. Public health authorities around the world are acting with a lot of urgency. Yeah. But I think the scenario that this turned into another pandemic is close to 0%.
Has the pandemic changed actually our relationship with, new diseases that should concern us?
I think so. What I worry about is because there's so many crises around the world that some governments are going to forget what just happened. But you have Moderna's commitment that we won't forget. We are building new plants around the world to build the distributed networks, Canada, Australia, more to come, Kenya, but more to come. We're working on the top 15 viruses that have been on the watch list of governments forever and scientists forever that nobody has really worked on. And we have committed in March in the UK that we're going to take into the clinic vaccine against those 15 viruses, so that if, God forbid, something happen again in terms of pandemic, we will be ready and go much faster than last time.